All right, everyone, this is actually very important news. Now, this is double-sided for his campaign, but Buttigieg has managed to raise more money even than Joe Biden in the second quarter of the campaign. Now, part of that is Biden slid backwards a bit. I think he was higher than that in the first quarter and barely jumped in. But it shows that Buttigieg is a force to be reckoned with regards to one thing, which is corporate donations. See, he's becoming the corporate candidate. I think that if you're like a neoliberal corporation, you don't really want to have to pay more taxes. You don't want a far-left Democrat who will actually raise the business tax and eliminate loopholes. You want them to focus on evil, rich, independent individuals like doctors and lawyers. Go ahead and tax them more. Put it in the individual income brackets. Don't you come for my business taxes unless you give me more loopholes. And that's usually what Democrats have done. Obama did this. He raised the taxes. The big multinationals never paid anything. That's the way it works because they donate to the campaigns. Buttigieg is now their candidate. It looks like some of them are siding with Biden, but some of them got flighty and they said, well, we're not sure that Biden's going to be able to do it because he's old, he's, nuts, and he says weird shit, he does stupid things. So, but here's this younger dude, he looks kind of cool, and he's, even though Buttigieg came out and said, well, we need to go further left to outflank Trump. Yeah, but you look at what he's actually proposing, and by the standards of the Dems that are on the field, he looks more moderate. It's, again, perception over reality. Even business owners, multinational business owners make tactical decisions based on perception, too. They try their best to avoid that, but they do. That's just the way that it works. And they're still human, except for Zuckerberg. He's a Generation 2.5 synth in the same class as Nick Valentine. Sometimes he has a little bit of a problem. Yeah, although he's not as good as Nick Valentine. He's one of the bad personalities they inserted into his programming, I guess. Fallout 4 reference, by the way. Great game. I like saying that because it antagonizes all of the fanboys of the pre-Bethesda era. But anyway, seeing Pete Buttigieg outraise and outspend Biden's something to behold. He's not even 40, and he's hauling in, 25 million. Biden had like 21. Sanders came in third. Warren and Kamala are trailing. I think some of the candidates I don't believe have released their totals yet. Probably because other than the top 5 candidates, for the most part, nobody else is raising jack shit. It's probably in the 6-figure range instead of 7 or 8 figures. How much did Cory Booker bring in? I think he listed his. I couldn't remember what it was. Imagine Williamson. You're like, oh yeah, I got $60. Yeah, that doubles Q1. Fuck yeah. Now I can take a bus trip back to DC finally after living in this commune for the last 3 weeks. That's basically what her campaign is. And then you've got people like Gabbard and stuff. They have small core fan bases that are quite loyal. Having a few tens of thousands of people give you a few dollars apiece is not enough to keep a presidential campaign going. The sad truth is that it costs at least some millions of dollars to run a viable skeleton crew campaign. It takes tens or hundreds of millions to run a normal campaign. And if you're talking about some of the big corporate campaigns that are heavily reliant on like TV and radio ads, it can cost upwards of $1 billion. And it's grotesque. It shouldn't be that way. What I think we should do, here's how I think campaigns should be financed. Citizens United should be done away with. That was the most terrible fucking decision ever. It's totally ridiculous. It allows corporations and banks to buy candidates, basically, which is what they do. That's why the Trump v. Hillary Clinton thing was so novel, because it looked like the Republican ran away with it in the primary, self-funds, and manages to hoodwink the entire establishment. I'm still hoping that that's the case. With some of the shit going on now, maybe so. Here's the thing, though. What ends up happening in a proper system is one person, one donation, one business, one donation, and then some public funding for, debates and basic things. Essentially, the top placers within, the top 4 parties and or the top 6 or 7 candidates thereof, independent candidates, would get a small amount of public money, which would provide basic transport and, messaging and stuff on public platforms, which need to be equal. Other than that, they can get 1 donation per person. Each person in the United States would be able to donate, let's say, $1,000 maximum. It would be capped. They don't have to donate it all to one person. They can donate 500 to here and 500 there. This is for both the primaries and the general, and so they would do that. And then each business, additional to that, because corporations are people. No, they're not. They're bad people anyway. Additional singular donation. That means Facebook and your local ma and pa bookstore get the same capped small donation, cap at 10,000 or something. That would be a proper system, because it would get corporate money largely out of politics, while still allowing those people, the fact that they are a job creator means, I don't have a problem with them having that little extra voice, but it's got to be a low cap. They've got to understand they're no better than any other business just because they happen to be large. They can't speak for their employees. In many cases, they speak for the exact opposite of their employees' best interests. In a lot of cases, you have like Bell and these other groups, they sponsor a bunch of neoliberals that want to force their employees to buy into unions they're not even members of. It's ridiculous. By the way, that was ended by the Supreme Court, thankfully. You can't force people to pay for a union that doesn't even represent them because they're not part of it. I think personally unions should be strictly voluntary. The idea of forcing people into unions is nuts. You want to voluntarily create one, it should always be legal for a union to be created. There shouldn't be union busting going on, but if they don't want to be part of it, if I say, hey, yeah, I'll work for your business, I don't want to be part of this union, fuck them. Who cares about it? Let people protect themselves if they think that they're better qualified than a union to do that anyway and speak for their own mind. As far as Buttigieg goes, though, I mean, again, it's sort of like a Biden story, only younger. Biden passes for a moderate within the Democratic Party. Now, he's not. His tax proposals, his healthcare overhaul proposals, his educational overhaul, all of those things are far left. 10 years ago, they would have been seen as on the leftish, the liberal side of the liberal party. Now they're seen as center-right within the Democrats, but that's because the party has left behind any semblance of sanity. Buttigieg sounds just slightly further left than Biden. And every single person on the stage says, yeah, we want to give free healthcare to illegal immigrants. But some of them don't even want to really give free healthcare to Americans, and regardless, it's going to cause a massive tax hike. They're not talking about eliminating any other form of entitlement program to pay for it. Yeah, I enjoy the idea of paying a 60% tax rate for shitty healthcare. Thank you, Joe Biden. Government is so benevolent. I am so happy that this has happened. Thank you for taking my money and spending it on things you think I need. You can spend it so much more wisely than I can. No, you can't. Absolutely no, you can't. I can invest it much more soundly than a central planning system can. You're talking about a move towards communism. You're talking about central planning. You're talking about the government absorbing yet another massive aspect of Americans' lives. It's not proper. Shouldn't be happening. Hell, a lot of the functions of government that are already there should be privatized or eliminated or given back to states and municipalities. Most of their functions should be. Federal government should be in charge of only a very small number of things. Strike a trade deal, make sure we have free trade. Run the military to make sure, that free trade is promulgated, throughout the sea to shining sea, and we're not getting invaded and stuff. And oversee very limited taxation for the most important infrastructure within the country and for the most basic rudiments of regulation to keep workers, workers' protection, environmental protection and stuff. That's all the federal government needs to do. And it would do it a lot better if you didn't have all of these different bureaucracies strangling each other. You could cut the tax rate in half and people wouldn't even notice it other than they'd have more in their paycheck at the end of the month. It's the only difference that would be made. So Buttigieg outraising even Joe Biden. Doing quite well. He's probably raised more money than the entire bottom half of the field did in the quarter, too. That's pretty formidable. He's got enough in his war chest right now to stay throughout the primaries. The problem is, will he continue to get enough money in the general? Is he a big money candidate? He's not Joe Biden. He doesn't have quite as much recognition and star power as Biden does. So they've got to weigh that very, very carefully. But then he's a lot more coherent than Biden is, too. That's about all. Peace out.